All right, so we're going to get started on this today's webinar. This webinar is about a topic that I think is actually very important. It's a self-improvement topic as well. If you're an attorney, it applies to you. If you're working inside of a law firm in an administrative capacity, it applies to you. And if you're not even practicing law right now, it applies to you as well. This is not because it's fairly simple. The things I'm going to be covering today, it's not actually going to be that long of a webinar compared to others. And then after we cover this topic, then we'll take a short break and take questions. Questions can be about this, or it can be pretty much about anything that you have questions about related to your career. I hear these kind of conversations quite a lot. And recently, a lawyer told me that a lot of the other attorneys she knows are looking to do something that other than practicing law. And what tends to happen is lawyers, especially people that go to top law schools and they start in jobs with the best firms, they've generally been performing at a very high level for most of their lives. They go to colleges, they do well there. They go to law school and they do well enough to get into good firms. So they go to good law schools. However, a lot of people, especially I think a lot of the highest qualified people, meaning the people that you would expect to do the best based on their qualifications and so forth, often don't have the most fulfilling and successful careers. A lot of them drop out. A lot of them wind up in places that I think they're very unhappy, but when they stick with it when they shouldn't, or when they don't get out of it when they should. And so no matter how talented how much talent and potential you have, there's other things that actually make you more successful than how you did in law school and what law school you went to. And that's something I've just observed over and over again. And just to give you a perspective, it's funny that a lot of times lawyers they look down on people in certain professions and will say certain branches of law and will say, oh, isn't personal injury law for people that didn't do well in law school and have all these problems and things wrong with them. And the funny thing is I know several personal injury lawyers and a couple that had jets. You can do very well in a lot of practice areas and things that you wouldn't think of. And those sorts of people that I know that do personal injury law do actually much, much better than lawyers in the largest law firms. And they just have a lot of potential and things, and they do very well. So there's people that succeed, and they succeed in the practice of law and in their careers and lives by doing some very simple things. And this is something that I'm very interested in because I've been reviewing resumes and then talking to attorneys and seeing what happens to them, being part of business groups. So there's a lot of attorneys, and watching what makes people successful in their careers. And some people end up having very good careers. They're able to be successful. It doesn't matter the economy, doesn't matter where they're working, but they're able to do very well. And other times there's attorneys that don't really do that. And they wind up in positions where they're unhappy, where they're not doing the work they like, where they're working too much or not getting enough work. And so that's what I'm going to cover today. What people do that end up making most of their career. And there are people that do that. And I think that the ones that I've seen tend to do the 7 things I'm going to talk about today. So the people that don't reach their full potential practicing law are often very complacent. And I can talk a lot about this in the future, but later today. But there's different types of people that are complacent. Sometimes people are complacent working in a law firm doing the same. A real sign of complacency I've often seen, and I hate to bring this up, but a lot of people that become sort of income partners in law firms and never generate business, or people that sit there in counsel rows and counsel positions in law firms and never get business and never rise out of there. They're just happy getting a certain salary and doing a certain. I used to hear when I was young, meaning 20 years old, I remember this guy that was mentoring me and was teaching me about this book, Think and Grow Rich. And he'd started this business washing windows, but it was making a ton of money. And he said something along the lines of, I could be a postman and do that and rely on that being complacent. And I could have done that. He said, people can be firemen and get a steady salary and things like that. But some people are not complacent. Some people just won't be complacent at all. And they're always trying to do better and trying to rise. And that's that type of fire that you need to have in whatever you're doing, because if you don't have it, it's going to be no different than the postman or the whoever has a job that they do and it's simple and they get paid and they're complacent and they can take it easy, but they're never necessarily going to go anywhere. So there was a girl, we used to go, I'm from outside Detroit. And so when you turned 18, the drinking age in Canada was 21, or I'm sorry, it was 18, and in Michigan was 21. So everybody used to, instead of going to local bars, and everyone would go to a few bars in Windsor, Ontario. And so that's what I was doing when I was 18 or 19. But I remember I was standing in a bar there with a bunch of kids from our town, and there was this girl that I had liked quite a bit. And she came up and started talking to me and asked me out for a date. And I'd known her quite a while, and since she was probably 6, and she was very accomplished and a good athlete student. And there was a guy that I knew that she had been dating for at least a few months, and he was in college and like a year older than her. And I asked her about her boyfriend, and she said it was starting to get boring. And so when she said that, I was surprised. What does that mean? You're involved with someone and suddenly it's boring, and therefore you're going to ask some other guy out. And what she was saying, though, I think, and it was interesting when I thought back on it, was that she no longer felt challenged. She felt that it was just the same. There was no progress to the relationship. It was just there, and nothing was happening. And this girl ended up becoming extremely successful. She went to some big company in New York, and she kept rising. And I think that sort of psychology that people have, and I hate to apply it to a dating life, but I remembered her always challenging herself and always trying to get better in sports and school and everything like that. And she'd always challenge herself. And so that's important. And so some people instinctively are no longer happy doing anything for a long time. And if it gets stale, then they push themselves to do new things. And so the idea of becoming complacent is more important, I think, of not being complacent is very important, because the most successful attorneys are never completely happy with their level of accomplishment, and they're always pushing themselves to do more and more. And it's very interesting what they do. And they're always thinking of the new opportunity. They're always thinking of how they can get the next client. They're always thinking of who they can meet. They're always thinking of how they can get an assignment from a certain person. They're always thinking about how they can do better than other people. And then there are people that don't do that. There are people that sit around inside of law firms and they just get work from people. They may have something on their background, like they went to a top law school or whatever, and that's their identity. Their identity is not constantly improving. Their identity is just being complacent and nothing's ever happening and nothing is going on. It's interesting. I remember sometimes I'll see people that I went to law school and knew and stuff applying to our company, and you look at their background and they're saying they're counsel somewhere and they've been counsel for 15 years. And they're complacent. And are other people that get into government positions and get complacent and get into all these positions and get complacent. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong being complacent and just having a steady job. There's nothing. But if you want to reach your full potential, you absolutely need to constantly motivate yourself. You need to constantly get better and better. And I've been doing what I do for 25 plus years. And every day, like I'm on calls for hours, like talking about how to improve a database, talking about how to match candidates to firms more, talking about how to create new rules and things that get jobs to people, how to improve relationships with law firms, how to hire the right people to work on things, that's what people do that aren't complacent. And that's what makes people successful. It's not just showing up and doing a job. It's not getting comfortable, because if you get comfortable, everything will slow down and eventually, and everything will get past you. There's always people that are going to be hungrier than you. There's always people that are going to try harder than you. And one of the things interesting about law firms is I'm always amazed, because every job I look at, the law firm will almost always say something like, we want between 2 and 5 years of experience. We want between 1 and 3 of experience. We want no more than 6 years of experience. And the reason they're saying that, I'm just letting you know, is because younger attorneys have more hope. They work harder. They're less expensive to bill out to clients, but they're also very enthusiastic compared to what they end up being later on. So people lose that kind of fight and they stop trying to do the best they possibly can. And when they start doing that, they can become complacent. So if you're a 7th to 10th year attorney and you haven't been generating business and all you're doing is doing the work that's given to you, that's a form of complacency, because you obviously know that it's going to get hard if you're in a law firm to do well in the long term. Sometimes you'll say, oh, I want to go in-house. And going in-house, you think there's going to be fewer hours and less challenges. That's a form of complacency. So people try to do all this stuff to complacent because they think it's safe, but it's not safe. Being complacent is probably the least safe thing you can do, because if you're complacent, there's always going to be someone that's not complacent, and that person is going to be learning more. They're going to be having more ideas. They're going to be working harder. They're going to be creating more opportunity. And this is what happens when you get complacent. And your life will start feeling like a routine. It's not going to be as exciting or inspiring. So you're going to be in a position where you're just doing a routine job, no different than the mailman going out and doing things. You're just always going to be doing a routine type of job. I was thinking once when I was in Detroit working, I was working as an asphalt contractor, but just doing this, it's called seal coating, putting tar on driveways and things. But I used to do also parking lots. And I remember there was a Detroit police officer that I found that was doing this. And he was probably in his, I don't know, at that time, probably his early to mid 30s. And he would go out and paint lines. So you have to paint lines after you seal a parking lot. He had to go out and paint lines. And I thought, wow, that's pretty industrious for some guy that is as a policeman, because most policemen will work and then they'll work for 20 years and get their pension or whatever, and then they'll retire. And so here was someone that was doing all this stuff and wasn't complacent, wasn't necessarily interested in a pension, going out and spending his time doing these parking lot lines. And then after that, I talked to him and he said, I want to go to law school. I want to do this and I want to do that. And so he was just not complacent on that job. And he was not complacent when he was going out and doing lines for people on their parking lots, and just not complacent. And he ended up going to law school and becoming a successful, I believe, criminal defense attorney, which is very funny because he used to be a police officer and he did very well. So he's doing very well. So you have to challenge yourself, and you have to always ask yourself if you can do better. Can you do better in your job? Can you do better? Can you do better by switching firms? Can you do better by doing something else that you're more enthusiastic about, even if it's not practicing law? Can you do better? I mean, you have to ask yourself, can you challenge yourself? Because if you start getting bored or complacent, then you need to be challenging yourself. People are always growing. Law firms there's always room for growth. You should be growing. You should be getting better and better at what you do each and every day. You should be getting better, and you should look back on the person you were a year ago and think, wow, this is how much better I am. You should look back at how you were professionally a year ago, and you should you should try to be better. So everybody really needs to be challenging themselves and trying to do better and trying to become a better person. The more you find yourself getting complacent, that's when you start to die. You start to just do the same thing over and over again. You're there, you're doing the work, but that's it. And then that's who you're going to get the reputation for being. You're going to be the reputation of someone that's called basically a grinder or whatever, if you're unhappy. If you're unhappy in the market you're in because you're not getting enough work, or you're unhappy in the size firm, but you should be working all you can. I'll just tell you a quick story. There was this attorney that I knew who what happened to him? I don't know. He went to a law school, then he had a job as a summer associate and didn't get an offer because his work wasn't good. And then he came out and he failed the bar exam, and I believe got fired from the firm he got a job at, and it wasn't a great firm. He studied for the bar exam, retook it, and went to another not great firm. But then he kept working as hard as he possibly could and getting the most hours and getting the best work, because and then constantly challenging himself to do better and better. And eventually wound up at like an AM Law type firm, and with a lot of business and doing very well, but had continually, from the moment he studied for the bar the second time, he challenged himself and did very well. And so these are the kind of stories that I hear a lot. I hear stories of people that don't get complacent, and they, when they don't get complacent, very good things happen. I've met people that have started their own practices because they felt working in a law firm is too complacent. You may choose to start your own law firm or do something where you feel like you can challenge yourself. If you start your own law firm, you're going to have to learn how to get business. You're going to have to learn how to grow the business. You have to learn how to hire people. There's just so many things that you can do to try to get complacent. But the biggest mistake, and I'll just say this, it's very true, is one of the biggest mistakes you can make is looking for what appears like long-term security, because there really isn't anything as long-term security. There might be in certain government jobs and things where you're more likely to have security. But in general, if you're looking for complacency and long-term security, it's very hard. And I'll just give you the example like of going in-house. So people always think if they go in-house, they're not going to have hours. They're not going to be able to, they're not going to have to generate business. There's going to be safety. But in reality, in-house is actually one of the worst places to become complacent. And the reason is because the company could go out of business. The company could slow down and have mass layoffs. The company, look, if you were working at a place like Twitter, for example, the company might bring in a new general counsel, and that person will want their own legal department and get rid of the people there. The company might bring in a new CEO, and they'll bring in a new general counsel. I mean, there's all sorts of things that can happen when you go in-house. And because people do that looking for complacency, they often find that it's very hard to keep jobs there. And then the same logic applies in companies as it applies in law firms. Companies also prefer younger people. So if you're trying to get complacent there and you've been there a few years, most in-house attorneys, once they've been there a few years, start learning how to not do work and give it to outside firms and so forth. And then people pick up on that and replace them. So it's just, you can't ever look for security. You can't ever look for complacency, because if you do, you're going to be far beyond your potential in whatever it is you do. You need to be in a position where you're constantly improving, where you believe you're constantly improving, and where you, most importantly, where you want to constantly be improving. So if you don't feel like you want to constantly be improving in your position inside of a law firm or wherever you're working, that's bad. You need to be in a position where you have a fire and a desire to do something. And if you don't have that fire and desire, then you have to ask yourself, what's going to come of me if I get complacent? And I'm sorry to keep harping on this so much, but this is one of the biggest mistakes that people make. If you become complacent, you will get run over by people that aren't. So that's the danger. And you may want to be complacent. You may say to yourself, I don't want to be used by someone trying to get me to bill all these hours. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm having to work all the time. And that's not necessarily complacency. Your complacency is when you get in a situation, you don't challenge yourself and you're not growing and you don't want to grow. And what that means is you need to be in positions like working and maybe in some other profession or doing something else where you can constantly be growing. Because if you do that, you're going to have a much better career in life. Where I was making $170,000 a year, which was a lot of money back then. And I had no idea what I would do done with my career. I literally quit a job with no plans or anything at all. And because I was complacent, I didn't like it. I just saw myself sitting in office, doing random assignments, most of which I didn't care about. And I just was not happy. Felt like I wasn't growing. And I was also in a bad firm that was basically what was going to business, but it was a very difficult decision. But I just saw myself basically standing on a road that wasn't moving. And not only that, but was moving backwards. And trying to be complacent there was crazy. People were doing things there like buying houses and settling down with families. But to me, that seemed very risky, especially when partners were losing their positions and things like that. So everyone, when I certainly came up with that decision to do that, thought it was just absolutely completely nuts. That why would somebody quit a position paying? At that time, it was one of 3 or 4 New York firms in Los Angeles. So they paid salaries of 50% or more beyond what other people were. And people thought this decision was completely nuts. People made fun of me for making the choice. It just wasn't something that people thought was right. But it was also something that I knew I had to do. So imagine you're sitting someplace every day and you're ambitious, but you feel nothing is going anywhere, but you don't like necessarily the people you're practicing with, you don't like the environment, you feel like you're boxed in, you feel that it's a dangerous place to be complacent, you feel that you're not growing, and you're young and you definitely want to grow. And in that period of time, the economy was actually on fire because of internet companies starting. And I was like, I would rather be part of that than sit here. I would rather put myself in a position where I can do very well instead of sitting here. And so the idea from my standpoint is I knew that I needed to do something different. And I knew I needed to get out of there. And I knew I needed to plan something for the rest of my life that at least that I was passionate about and that I could see myself doing in the long term. And I had to go against the opinions of others, the opinions of my wife at the time, my opinions of people I worked with, the opinions of people I knew. Socially, I had to go against everyone's opinions, and I had to make sure that I did what was best for me. And when I did leave the practice of law, I listened to what was inside my heart, so the opinions of attorneys and other people. And you need to listen to your own opinions too. What is it you would do better? What is it that you have natural skills for? What is it that makes you excited? What is it that you can see yourself constantly growing? And what is it that is going to do that? And the problem, of course, that people have is they put themselves in a position where they're not growing or where they become complacent and where they don't have the resources to do anything different. So maybe they buy houses and cars and things that make them dependent on this job. And so they have to, or maybe they feel like they have to live in a certain neighborhood to impress people, or maybe they feel like they have to do things or do work that's not something that they like. And I remember when I was quitting, my wife was like, how are you going to support us? How are you going to pay for your house payment? How are you going to do all this? And people are concerned about how others think of them, and they want to maintain a certain image. It's very interesting with attorneys. Like attorneys want to be, they want to be thought of as attorneys. They want to be thought of as in a way that they look successful to others. If other people are saying negative things about their jobs and their firms, they'll listen to that, and they will allow that to influence them, and it will end up hurting them. So you really have to be careful about relying on the opinions of others, and you have to do what's best for you. Sometimes it may be crazy, like when I quit the practice of law. And just a quick, I'll just tell you what happened to me, because sometimes when you do things like that, when you're following your heart, it's very interesting what happens. And for me, what happened is I was at a firm called Dewey Ballantyne, which is no longer in existence. But the head of the office was this guy from New York. That was actually a pretty nice guy. And so I quit, I quit like on a Monday or something. I gave 2 weeks notice. And for the next 2 weeks before I was quitting, people just kept giving me assignments and everything. Nothing was going on. No one said anything that I was quitting, just nothing. And so on the Thursday before I was leaving, I was supposed to leave on a Friday. The head of this office came by, and he's like, you can't quit without a job. If you quit without a job, it's going to be very difficult for you to get another job, which is something that I warn everybody about. If you can all help it, you never want to get a job without a job. You never want to be unemployed if possible, because if you're unemployed, then it looks like you may have left because you're crazy and don't like it like me, or you may have left because the firm asked you to leave or wasn't giving you work. So he came by and he said, if you leave, you're going to have these troubles. So what I would recommend is take 2 or 3 months, talk to some recruiters, and find another position. And then if you don't like that, then you can do the same thing. So I started talking to recruiters. And when I talked to them, I was amazed that none of them really understood the market, that a lot of them were doing very well financially, that they did all the things that I thought were fun at the time, learning about people, telling law firms about people, and doing financially. So just this whole job, as I went out interview after interview, I watched what the recruiters were doing, and I watched how the firms work. It became something that I was very excited about and thought would be a lot of fun. When I ended up leaving the firm, I got 2 or 3 offers to go work places. But when I ended up leaving, the firm helped me with work. They gave me work to do, meaning to bill out to clients that they weren't representing. And I also was able to get work too. And for the next, as I sat down for my first week, I was like, this is great. I have enough money. I have enough work to make, I don't know what it was, like $5,000 that week. And I have enough to do $4,000 the next. And so I was all excited. But instead of doing that, everyone was basically saying you should continue practicing law. I went and I started doing all this recruiting stuff. And the first week I lost $5,000 because I didn't do the work. And the next week I lost $4,000 because I did the work. And I did something that I really appealed to me. And then eventually I gave away all this work and very quickly before I'd even made any placement. So the point is that you need to not rely on others about what you should do. You need to follow whatever it is you want to do. And you can't rely on others' opinions when you're reaching those conclusions. You have to do what moves you, what's in your heart. And if you do that, you're almost always going to do better than if you do something differently. Think about just all sorts of people in all sorts of professions that follow and do what they want, and they don't rely on others' opinions. And you can't rely on others' opinions, because if you rely on others' opinions, you're never going to do well. An example would be an attorney from a top 10 law school that's working in a large firm doing commercial litigation and decides to become a personal injury attorney or something. These are choices that most people don't make. But if they like it and it's something that appeals to them, and they do it. And then you need to not rely on opinions of others, and you need to do what you think is the best thing to do. Because everyone is trying to do gets brainwashed by others' opinions, and that hurts them. One of the things I think is really funny is a lot of times when you talk to attorneys, and I bring this up in a lot of these webinars, but they say things like, this firm is in trouble. It's really having some problems. I needed to get out of there while I could. And you look at the firm and it's 125 years old. And so you can't, and these people there's negative groups that pop up in every firm. Then it's just how it is. It's like that in all social groups. There's people that are positive and keep their head out of bad things and bad information, don't take it seriously. And there's people that listen to everything bad that they hear. And so if you do that, it's going to keep you back. If you want to be on the negative side of what people are saying, that's going to hold you and hurt you. You need to fill your mind with ideas of potential and ideas of potential prosperity and ideas of advancement and all these sorts of things. And if you do that, you're going to do better. You're going to be happier. People are going to like you more. You're going to get more work. You're going to do better work. But you just can't be on the side of this negativity. That does you freaking no good. You have dark spirits and white spirits, and you want to be part of the white spirit group. You want to just be, when I say white, I don't mean white as black and white. From dark shirts and the spiritual side of, you look at the sky and it's clear, and you look at the ground and it's one thing. So you want to be on the side of positive information and not something where you're relying on negative opinions of others that are going to hurt you. People that are doing that and sharing those opinions are very dangerous, because they're trying to influence your mind in a negative way and going to hurt you. So you need to be very careful about others' opinions. And the other thing too is if your parents expect you to keep practicing law, if you want to keep practicing law because you're trying to impress people you grew up with, if you want to try to stay in a really good firm where you're unhappy because you want to impress people from law school, if you are working because you need to, other people, you just can't rely on the opinions of others. You need to do what you want to do. And that's going to help you a great deal. And that's really what should be happening. A lot of these top law schools, meaning your Yales and your Stanfords and things, and a lot of times people will come out of there and they'll do things that have nothing to do with what you work in a law firm. They'll go and they'll volunteer to work in some country helping the government, just all sorts of random decisions. But those random decisions that they make, often because they're doing what they like and it looks random, they often lead to getting in the government and doing all sorts of very interesting things. If you think about Barack Obama, he became a law professor at the University of Chicago. I don't even think he was a law professor, he was like an assistant or something, and then became president. Or Bill Clinton, the University of Arkansas, he became a teacher there. So people do things that they enjoy, and that if you do what you enjoy and you don't try to work in a firm like everyone else or try to do something and you have the confidence to do that and don't follow the herd, then you do very well, as opposed to relying on the opinions of others as to what you should do. And a lot of times, the other thing that happens too, and this is very sad, and I see this quite a bit with attorneys, is a lot of attorneys will allow difficulties, things that happen to them along the way to ruin their careers and really have a huge dent on their self-confidence. And lots of people, you included, but pretty much everybody out there have had lots of setbacks and all sorts of difficulties in their careers and their lives. And it's very common for people to have problems. Most attorneys get fired at some point in their career. Some get fired multiple times. Most attorneys make horrific errors and legal things in their career and get in trouble. Most attorneys have problems. And the idea that you should have is, when you have a problem, are you going to get through that are you going to get through with it and use it to come out on top, or are you going to allow it to drag you down? I've had things happen all the time where I'll be talking to some part, be like, oh, I've got this $12 million book of business, but I'm losing my job. I'm like, why are you losing your job? So it came out that I was dating a paralegal when I was an associate, and it was considered a breach of powers. I don't know. And it's really bad. And I don't know if you'd want to represent me. And I'm saying, so what happened? Like, you were dating a paralegal 5 years ago when you were an associate, and because you had a role that was superior to her, this giant law firm is firing you? Or is that, and they just found out, is that what you're telling me? And he's, yeah, that's what I'm saying. I have no idea if you'll represent me. I don't know what's going to happen in my life and my career. My wife is divorcing me because she found out. And I'm like, wow, what are you going to do? And what did I tell him? I told him, I don't know if you could even, want to put your name behind me and everything. And I'm like, this is just absolutely crazy. I understand that may have been a bad thing that you did. And I'm not going to comment on how bad I think it was, but I don't think that any law firm is going to hold that against you. And so instead of allowing me to help him apply to what could have been with his practice area, 100+ firms, he decided to only apply to 2 or 3. And when those 2 or 3 firms didn't express any interest, which I'm sure didn't have anything to do with this incident, but he wanted to make sure that he told them all about this incident. And so I had to put that in the letters. And then when they didn't interview him, he decided that his career now was over and working in law firms after having gotten this huge book of business. And he was going to go off and do something else. And what it was that he did wasn't something that was that impressive. It was something like work with a couple guys to, I don't know, to try to start some business that he didn't seem that enthusiastic about. You have to realize that bad things are going to happen to you. And when bad things happen, like with this guy, he should have applied to a ton of places. He should have let me help him. But he had some narrative in his head that because of this, he just had to fail. And that was all there was to it. And it was important for him to, instead of using this as rocket fuel to get mad and improve his situation, he used it as something to feel badly about and to allow it to ruin his career. And that's what happened. I know attorneys that have been fired more than 5 times, and they continue to have good careers. Every time they get fired, they respond in a good way. I know people that have been fired once, and sometimes it was for bad mistakes, and they were so upset by this, they got into drugs and just went off the deep end, and they never recovered from it. And it's very sad. Obviously, getting fired once is not that big of a deal. Getting fired 5 times is something you can certainly learn from. Every time you learn a lesson, it's not the end of the world. So you have to be resilient and never let negative experiences hold you back. What you should be doing when you have negative experiences is you should be allowing those negative experiences to get you fired up and use those things as something that makes you try harder, that makes you do better, that makes you not make the same mistakes twice, that makes you do exactly the opposite of what the mistake you did before, and become known for being an expert in that. I'll just tell you an experience that I had. I was working for this federal judge, and he was very big on having perfect punctuation and perfect, no typos, just very tight language, meaning you would eliminate. Hemingway wrote very tight language, and he was very into that as well. And when I got there, I thought all this stuff was dumb and stupid, and I made some errors, and he got very upset and almost to the point where he was like, if you don't fix this, your job's in danger. So I did. I put everything I possibly could into it. I got mad. I just did the best I could, and all that stuff improved dramatically. And by the time I got into law firms, partners and things started giving me stuff to proofread because I was very good at it. And so I turned what had been a weakness that I could have allowed to ruin my career had I not fixed it and not been aggressive, instead of being, and became a strength. And so you have to let negative experiences make you do better. And you have to, if you get fired, you have to figure what you did before, what you didn't do right. Or if you're at the wrong firm, you have to decide, and you're unhappy, you have to realize what kind of environment I'm happy in. You have to find those things, and you have to apply to more places. And it's with negative experiences are really something that happen to a lot of people, but you cannot define yourself on a negative experience. You can't say, because I did this, things aren't going to work out for me, or because this happened, I'm bad, or because of this mistake. You need to turn any negative experience into something positive, because if you turn it into something positive, then you're going to do better. Every mistake should be, I'll do better in the future. I'll do this better in the future. I'll do this better in the future. And this is how partners, for example, with a lot of business think. They're like, I made a mistake. I didn't get this client. I really wanted that client. I'm going to do this differently in the future. I'm going to work with this. And so that's how the best people think. And that's how you need to think. You need to think through everything that's negative, and you need to fix it, or you need to avoid situations that are negative in the future that you're not going to do well at. But you can't allow any difficulties you experience to ruin your career and your life. You just can't. You have to figure out how you can take those negatives and how you can turn them into opportunity and a learning experience from it. And you have to process them and understand why those can be positive, or why you won't do the same things in the future. And a lot of attorneys actually sabotage their success. They don't reach their full potential because they start associating negative things with being successful. So you have to be competitive to be successful. You have to want to do better than other people. You have to think, how can I compete, whether it is socially, or whether it's with the quality of your work, or the amount of work, or whatever makes you the most competitive. And you have to do that in whatever organization you're in. You have to watch what people are doing that are becoming successful and what's required in that environment. And every job, every organization has levels of competition to it. You're not always going to win. And a lot of people, when they try to become successful and fail, they start feeling poorly about themselves, and as if there's something wrong with them, and therefore they can't be successful. And because they didn't succeed once, they feel they don't want to have the negative associations with trying to become successful again. So sometimes they will take positions that are safe, that they believe are safe and secure, because they don't want to feel poorly about themselves if they don't succeed again. They put themselves in positions where it's too competitive, because they believe that they don't want to feel badly about themselves again, because they failed in one environment and not the other. And one of the things I'll say, and this is something I do write a lot about, is that if you are unsuccessful in one environment, it doesn't mean you're not going to be successful in another environment. Every law firm has a different type of culture. Some are very uptight, and some people are comfortable in that. Some are very loosey-goosey, not uptight. Some respect the quality of your work, and that's all that matters. And they don't care what's going on with you, whatever you're doing on your free time, that will allow you to be the person you want to be. And some law firms, you just have to find the right culture and with the right type of people. And if you're unsuccessful in one environment, that doesn't mean you're going to be you're not going to be successful in another. So you need to be able to put yourself in different environments if you're unsuccessful in one. And literally, some people can go into a law firm environment, and there's a certain type of culture. They don't click with a culture. And because they don't click with a culture, the law firm may not give them as much work. It may be more critical of them. It may not make them feel included. And it's all about culture. It's not necessarily about you. And if you find the right culture where the people are like you, those same people will protect you. Those same people will give you extra work and advance you. And so you can't rely on one thing negative in an environment and not becoming successful with the fact that you'll never succeed. And I see this all the time. I see people that just feel like I'm this, I'm that, because something poor happened or bad happened to them. And you cannot define yourself based on negative things that may have happened. And you can't allow yourself to associate pain with certain things. You can't allow yourself to associate pain with things that may not really be or will be something that you can overcome. You can't say, I'm a loser. I knew someone that was married twice, once for 10 years and another time for 3 years. And this was 30 years ago, or not 30 years ago, 40 years ago. And so the person said, I'm a 2-time loser. I can never get married. It's obviously I'm not good at it. It's not going to work. That's a sad thing, because why would you want to be in your 80s and have spent the past 35 years telling yourself you're a loser and no one's going to want to be with you and you're going to be alone? And so that's something that would control your life. It's negative. It was hard getting divorced twice. I must be a failure. I must not be the right kind of person. No, you probably just didn't meet the right kind of person, the kind of person that sees the world like you. And that's what people need to do. I've heard so many people that kind of walk away from potential to be successful because they believe that if they get there, there's going to be some certain sort of negative connotation and belief. And a lot of times people have ideas that are negative. People will say things like, I would never want to be a partner. I don't like that lifestyle. I would never want to do this because then I would be saying this. And the big one, by the way, is people that say, I never, want to have to be a partner because I don't. And it's maybe you don't want to be a partner at your firm, but maybe you'll be a partner somewhere else. And so you can't allow yourself to associate negative things with success. You can't accept that you'll never be successful. I remember every year there's people that I see their resumes and something will happen. They'll get a local law school. So they might be in Detroit and they might go to get in. The only law school they get into that's any good is Wayne State, which is maybe a top 150 law school. It's not a great law school, but it's a good law school. And especially if you want to practice in Detroit, and there's a lot of people that go there and come out of there that I know. I'm impressed with law school, but it's not the kind of law school where you can get a job in a giant firm in Los Angeles or something, or even in Detroit, and so people go there, but they're like, okay, well, this is the school I got into. I'm going to do the absolute best I can, and I'm going to work like crazy. And then they do stuff like transfer to Michigan and at University of Michigan. And suddenly here they are interviewing with these major law firms and working in big firms in Chicago and New York and stuff, all just because they didn't allow themselves to accept that was the end of the road for them. Same thing they didn't think that they would ever do it. So the same thing goes with the law firms you work at and everything. And sometimes people just fear that they're not going to be successful because they have just negative associations. People are pointing bad ideas of what it'd be like to be a certain level of success and all that sort of stuff. And so people don't do well. The next thing is a lot of attorneys don't reach their potential, don't always firmly grasp what success is. The success is being average or below average. You can see the world that way. You can decide to be positive, you can decide to be negative, or you can decide to be above average. I had an interesting experience happen. And this basically crushed me. I was in middle school or something, and I went away on this trip. And this is way before I was in Spain, I think. And this is way before people could pick up the phone and call you if you're in Spain, or because you had to go to these booths and a place to call. You couldn't do that. And people also couldn't send emails, so they'd write letters. And then I had gotten middle school last semester grades that weren't that great. They were like C's and B's or something. And my dad wrote me this letter, and it said, you're on the path to a very mediocre life and with these kind of grades. And if that's what you want, that's what you can have. It's very different when you decide you want a good life as opposed to a mediocre life. So you have a choice. You can be average or below average and refuse that, or you accept that, or you can refuse it. And you have to find a way to succeed regardless of the conditions you're in. When you do what you have to do to be successful. And unfortunately, this competitive instinct is something that makes a lot of people successful. If you walk in to situations and you figure out how you can be the best and you positively self-talk yourself, like what you can do and how you can succeed, that's going to make you better. This is what successful people do. Successful people look at every situation, every case that they're in is a chance to do well and succeed. And they don't want to accept the possibility of being successful as you can. I know people all the time that the most successful people I meet, they're always like talking and thinking about situations in a way where they could have done better and where they saw how other people were doing better. They tried very hard. And so if you don't want to accept being average and you want to ensure you do the best, then you're going to do better. So the attorneys that refuse to be average will make sure they bill the most hours, or they're on the top. Make sure that they do everything they can to impress reviewers. They do everything they can to get the best results possible for their clients. And I see this a lot of time too with attorneys. Like, this is very common. You have good attorneys that will go all out and they will work and they'll find special things that help their clients and give them an edge, and they'll do more research or look into things or do the absolute best they can. And then there's other people that are just pushing paper and very unenthusiastic and don't do that. I remember once I had this case, and I think it was on appeal, and the person that I was litigating against had hired this incredible attorney. This guy got made up and just got up and just gave a brilliant argument. Literally, there was a buzzer, like when he had to be done, ended right before then. And then I had my attorney get up and he was just lifeless and gave a talk for 2 or 3 minutes. And I remember his collar was bent up, and he had gone to University of Texas Law School and was like very top students in his class, but had just been working in a small firm with a couple other people that were similar, not necessarily getting the best results and just very average. And of course he lost. You want to be like the attorney that gets up there and makes an impassioned argument for their client and does the absolute best and doesn't just push paper and do what's asked of them. You want to get excited. And this is what the best people do. They'll get excited about working in an assignment. They'll get excited about getting a really good assignment from the best attorneys, or they'll get excited about having billed the most hours. They'll get excited about getting their client a great result. They'll get excited about an assignment and do the best they can, regardless of what it is. It could be a memo, it could be anything, but you do the best you can. You try to make sure that your work shows more than what other people do. And one thing that my father taught me that was pretty interesting is in Michigan, of course, where I grew up, it snows a lot. And so when it snows, you have to do things like you have to shovel the driveways and the walkways and stuff. And I used to do that. And he would say, at the time, the Japanese were designing or building much better cars in the US. They didn't break down. They got good gas mileage. They were just better made. And he said, well, how would a Japanese kid approach doing this work? And he said he would make sure he cleaned all the awnings if they could reach them. He'd make sure there was snow in the trees if he could reach some of the shovel, he would do it. He would make sure that the walkways were just doing extra, like making sure that your work actually you went far, you did more than it was required, and you made sure that you were doing things the best they could. And that's refusing to be average. And that's the kind of thing that the Japanese were doing with cars back then. They were 10 times better than the US guy. And so you need to refuse to be average. And then the biggest one I think that a lot of people do is they don't have a strategy. They don't have a roadmap for where they're going. And if you need to have a roadmap and you need to have goals and know where you're going. If you don't have goals, by the way, and you don't write down goals and then what happens is other people with goals will end up controlling you. So this is something to think about. Like, the people with goals are the ones that control their careers and their lives. The people without goals are the people that get controlled by other people's goals. You need to know where you're going and what you want. And when you set goals, what they do is they guide you towards your destination, and everything starts falling in place, and you achieve your goals, you get close to them. And the reason having goals is so important is because when you have goals, you start paying attention to things that are going to lead you to your goals. And then you start avoiding things that are going to take you away from your goals. So if you have goals and you know where you're going, then that's going to help you. And you'll ignore things that aren't taking you to your goals. You'll know resources that'll bring you closer to goals. For example, if you're trying to get business and you know that going to this conference could help you, then you'll do that. If you know that you're trying to get business, know that going to this conference won't help you, you'll not do that. So you'll start just watching things that are going to bring you closer to your goals. Maybe working on a certain type of thing will bring goals. Maybe working for a certain type of partner will bring you to your goals, or doing something. So when you have goals, everything falls into place, and you don't know why, but having the goals will just help you make countless thousands of decisions that will lead you towards those goals. And so what you need to do is you need to decide on your goals what you want, and you need a strategy for that. It doesn't have to be a perfect strategy, but it's very important that you have a goal, and you need to know where you want to go. How much business do you want to generate? How quickly do you want to be advanced to your partner? If your partner, what type of clients? What is your strategy? What type of work? How are you going to make yourself look on paper? What are you going to do? How are you going to become more visible? So you need these goals if you're going to succeed. And again, attorneys that don't reach their goals are people that don't follow through with their plans. They may have goals, but then they don't follow through. So you need to set up systems to make yourself accountable and methods for monitoring your progress. You write down a simple thing is you write down goals for the year, and then you look at your goals every day and you write down what can I do today, or every week you write down what can help me reach those objectives. And that helps you follow through. So if you want run 5 miles a day. Most people will try a week or two and then they'll give up. And a lot of people are what's called dabblers. And a dabbler is someone that just tries something, they get a little progress, but then if they have run into any difficulty, they quit. And this commitment and follow through are the most important components of success. The idea is that you have to turn your goals. You can't be complacent and associate success with. Important to ask questions. The more you ask, the better. It looks like there's some good questions. The other thing too about your questions, if you ask questions, I'd never use your name or anything like that. So sometimes people are signed under Zoom and so forth, but I would never use your name. So other questions are confidential. So let me just see here. Okay. If someone asks a question of being a recruiter, which I guess I can answer. Let's see here. I want to challenge myself as an attorney, but how do I serve recruiters and employers? I want to leverage my experience in the new practice areas. How can I sell that to them? So the only way, this is important to understand. So anyone that's trying to get a position, you basically have to follow the laws of economics. In order for someone to hire you, hiring you has to make economic sense for them. So that's basically it. So anytime you're looking for any type of job, it has to make the law firm or whoever's trying to hire you has to make economic sense. Now, I do want to bring something up. And this is a question that people ask a lot. They say, "Oh, I want to go into a new practice area. I want to switch practice areas." Just think about that from a law firm's point of view. So if a law firm has an opening for a litigation attorney, let's say for a corporate attorney, and you apply and you are a litigation attorney, I don't think that any law firm is going to have any reason to hire you for that opening. And this is what people try to do all the time. They think that just because they want to switch practice areas, law firms are going to like that. But the problem is that it demonstrates you're not committed to one practice area, or committed to one practice area, and that sort of thing. And you might switch again, all that sort of stuff. So the only way to really, if you want to switch practice areas, the only way to do it is it's very difficult to do. The best way to do it is to basically, you can work at a firm that is much less prestigious than when you could potentially get a position at, to do that type of work and take a big pay cut and then move up from there. That's one way to do it. Then that can work. Another way to do it is to offer to work for free in some cases. And I don't think these are necessarily the best ways, but those are a couple different ways to leverage your experience into something else. But it's very difficult for attorneys to switch practice areas. And I've been doing this business for 25 years. And I don't know that I've placed someone that was trying to switch practice areas. It's very difficult. I've worked with some people that were first in their class from like some major type of law school. And those people tried to switch practice areas and didn't get a lot of traction. So typically, if you want to switch practice areas, and what most of the people have done that I worked with that have done it successfully, have done it within their own firm, or they've gone to another firm and managed to some similar type of work. Okay, that's your question. I'm interested in understanding if complacency is something that develops gradually, or if there are specific triggers that lead attorneys down this path. Can you shed some light on the factors that contribute to complacency among legal professionals? Complacency happens when you are satisfied your level of success. So that's pretty much how it works. Like if you're satisfied, you think whatever you're doing is enough. If you think that way, then that's you'll be in trouble for that. So the factors that contribute to complacency, I think, how do I answer that? I think it's feeling secure, the need to feel secure and then in pay status and that sort of thing, and not wanting more it's really how that works. So wanting to feel secure and then not wanting more from your job or whatever. Because if you're one of the people that's complacent, you're pretty much going to get run over by people that aren't. Once you start trying to feel secure, then a lot of times that will end up hurting. Now, it's not like that in all professions, but if you're doing that in a law firm or an in-house position, you're not constantly pushing yourself to try to do better, then you're pretty much looking for security. It's very interesting because I think about this literally every day. When law firms have openings, they always say 2 to 4 years of experience, or 1 to 3 years of experience, or 5 to 7. And they very rarely say 10 plus. They just don't. They don't say it. They always want people that are younger. And sometimes they will say they want senior people. Like right now, healthcare is very active because people are suing healthcare providers for all the billing related issues and so forth. So law firms are looking for a lot of senior people all over the country. And the same thing to some extent with some of these bankruptcy openings. They want senior people. For the most part, though, if you don't have business and so forth, law firms really, there's people that have been there, they're competing for partner. If you're leaving, then you're probably not, if you're trying to get a job, you probably weren't the best quality of your existing firm, and you're not part of that competition anymore. Your billing rates are higher. But one of the biggest things, I think, why there's so much prejudice against older attorneys a lot of times is because once you get to that level, you have to protect yourself. You're not taking risks. You may really need the paycheck because you're supporting a family. I don't know what it is, but I think that it becomes very dangerous to be complacent ever in a law firm or any job. You need to be doing more than what's asked of you, and you need to be the person that's on top. And if you're not, it's just very hard. And law firms are a very difficult place to work and just to keep your job, and it's very difficult. That's what you need to do to survive in a way that you want to constantly be on top of. Let me just see. Okay. Are there specific warning signs or indicators that suggest I might be overrelying the opinions of others in shaping my legal career, potentially hitting my potential growth? The thing that I think of the opinions of others is the opinions of others are things like they, say you should be a lawyer is one. So you should be a lawyer, friend, family. So you do what you don't want to do when you stop liking it. So that's one thing. Then the other opinion would be practicing this firm is bad or it's bad. I need to leave. All those sorts of things that people are putting negative opinions or it's hindering your professional growth. The thing is that the people that run law firms that are in power, they know the people that are saying negative things about the firm and think negatively about it. They know the people that are positive. And so if you're associating with these negative people, that's something that will put you in the same league as them, and you will be seen as someone like that. So you have to put yourself in a position where you're not involving yourself with negative things, people. It's very interesting. There's this thing that I read last weekend, and I don't remember exactly what it said, but actually I can find it right now. Let me just see what it was. 1 second. But it was very interesting. Yeah, one of the things that we're saying is that a lot of times people will involve themselves in other people's issues. So if somebody says something negative about another person, then they'll involve themselves in that. Or if someone says something negative to them, they will give opinions about something that the person said or something, even though it's not about them. So the idea is you want to avoid other people's negativity and not try to get involved in it, whether it's news or whether it's how they talk about work or they talk about things. You want to associate with people that are positive and that seem to be growing as opposed to the negative people. And there's always, everyone's going to be negative. So someone will do poor work and look at a bad review or something will happen. Suddenly they're negative on the firm, or someone doesn't like, I just like someone, or so. You just need to be very, very careful about being around that sort of stuff. And you need to do what you can to avoid the kind of people that are negative. Okay, contact your office looking for recruitment because I'm a Mexican attorney and they told me that your services are only for U.S. attorneys. I found this so discriminatory. Do you have advice in order to get a job according to my knowledge as an attorney? Okay, so just think about it. This is important to think about this. This good question, by the way, is for attorneys everywhere that are trying to get positions, because you have to think about things from a business point of view. So there are certain states, like, I'm going to answer the Mexican attorney's question in a minute, like Florida, California, I don't know, Texas. I'll do those two for now. So there's certain states that have very hard bar exams and where a lot of people fail. And so if you're an attorney, say you're an attorney in New York and you want to go to work in one of those states in New York and you do corporate law, and you want to go to work in Florida, and you want to go to work in Florida without the bar, if it's hard to pass the bar exam and there's plenty of corporate attorneys already in Florida, why wouldn't the Florida firm just hire someone that does corporate work there? Why would they bother bringing someone in from out of state that doesn't have a bar? What do they gain out of doing that? It's just a big risk from a business standpoint. Same thing with a firm in California. Now, if you have a bar and you're the most qualified for an opening that they have, then yeah, they interview and hire you. Why would somebody from a business standpoint take that risk of hiring someone from out of state, unless there was something exceptional about them if they didn't have the bar? I know people from different states all the time. Someone from Detroit to New York, but they'll have a bar. You have to have something that shows a commitment, and so no one's going to, from a business standpoint, but they're just going to hire, we'll hire a Florida attorney, right, that has it. So there's no reason for them to do it. Or California, same thing. We'll hire a California attorney because plenty of people already have that experience. What's the point of hiring someone from out of state, and what do they have to gain unless there's just a real shortage of those people? So if you're a Mexican attorney, that means a lot of things. It means you're going to need visa sponsorship. It means you're going to need the bar sponsorship. You're going to need the bar. You're going to need the bar exam. You're going to need, what else are you going to need? You're going to need, you're going to need training and so forth. So why would a law firm, if they have an opening for a litigation opening, why would a law firm be interested in hiring someone from Mexico when they need visa sponsorship, bar exam, training? English may not be their first language. I don't know, might be, but it's just crazy. Who would do that? What do they have to gain when they get 50 U.S. attorneys in the state and so forth? What do they have to gain? You think about it from their point of view. If you were a Mexican law firm, would you hire a U.S. attorney that wasn't a Mexican citizen and didn't take the Mexican bar to come over there and work? Why would you do that? So it doesn't make sense. When a law firm is interviewing you or trying to hire you, this is important for everyone to understand. The law firm is asking, can you do the job? Meaning, do you have the skills? Will you do the job long-term? Can you be managed? I mean, these are all kind of questions. Are you a good cultural fit? These are just some of the most common questions that they ask. So can you do the job? In your case, you trained in Mexico, don't have the bar. English may not be your first language. So the idea is absolutely not. No, you can't. So why would they hire you? And then will you do the job long-term? If you're from Mexico, if you're from another country, if you are from another country, the odds are you'll return at some point. So that's what everybody does. So that means you don't know, or you may not be able to do the job long-term because you don't have enough experience you won't last because it's just not the position. So I would just tell you that's how people think. And so if you're an attorney and you're trying to get a position, why would there's no incentive to hire you. It's just like in a U.S. attorney, there's no incentive for them to hire them from certain states that don't have the bar. So this is not discriminatory. These are all just business decisions that they're making. It has nothing to do with not liking Mexicans or something. Nothing to do with that. It has to do with all the hurdles that you would need to go through. And the fact that, all things considered, who's the easiest hire? Who is the riskiest hire? Or the riskiest hire, and the one most likely to make us money. That's really the question. Once law firms understand, if you understand that question, you have to ask who is the least risky. So you have to ask, are you a risk compared to a U.S. attorney? Are you risky or not? And because you have to learn all these things and get up to speed, or you'd like to make money. So you just have to realize that because of these business things, the law firm just doesn't have a lot of incentive to hire you. And considering the challenge that attorneys may face in their careers, how can they develop resilience and maintain a positive mindset to navigate through difficult times without compromising on professional growth? So you just need to have goals. So goals in terms of what you want to do at different stages of your career. So you have goals, and then you write out your goals, and there's lots of goal programs. There's lots of ways to set goals. But if you have goals, then that will make you resilient, and you'll be able to keep bouncing back. And it is hard for a lot of people to remain resilient. So people have these bad things happen to them, and then after that happens, they lose faith in themselves. And you just can't do that. You need to constantly be resilient and able to talk yourself out of feeling badly about yourself when bad things happen, because so many people go through major challenges in their careers, and you need to have ways of talking yourself out of things. I'll get into some weird stuff right now, but let me just see here. I'll give you a second. Let me just see here. Yeah, you can go and how to develop resilience. I'll just give you some examples. YouTube. I'm just giving you some examples of things that I think like. So you can go to meditations, you can do things, and these actually work. I know it sounds weird, but they actually do work. And there's lots of studies that show these sort of things work. And so you can, if it was me and I was having a hard time with resilience, this is exactly what I think you need to do is these sorts of things you need to work on. You can meditate, you can listen to stuff before you go to bed. You can write out goals. You can do all sorts of things that will help you develop resilience. Now, there's one thing that I think is very interesting. There was this course, and self-confidence is a big thing. Everybody needs to have self-confidence. If you don't have self-confidence, you'll never succeed. So you need to develop self-confidence. But there was this thing called the self-confidence course, and I think the guy's dead right now. But he taught at Columbia, and it was like one of the most popular courses at Columbia University for a few decades. And the self-confidence course, I looked into it to see what it was all about. And it's basically this. So each day you write out the things that upset you, throughout the day. So you write each one down. So you start, you have Wednesday, January 13th, December 13th, example. And then you would say, I was nervous about argument with whatever. You just write out these different things each day. You write as many as you need to do of things that upset you, made you nervous, people that upset you, whatever. And you write them all down each day. And that's basically the course. And then you do that every day for a long time. And then you go back after having done it for some time, and that all the things that you wrote down, most of them that you were scared of didn't come into fruition. You realize that you're actually more in control of your life than you thought you would be. These sorts of meditations and these sorts of things are something that really some of the most successful people in the world do. They get in touch with what they're scared of. They write it down. They turn difficulties into challenges. They meditate on different things. Self-confidence, things that get into your subconscious mind are helpful. Other people write gratitude lists, and something a lot of people do each day. So all these things are really meant to help you develop self-confidence. And sometimes you need to do it. And weird ways, like writing things down. And, there's I like to talk about this book a lot just because it's a very famous self-help book, but there's this book, Think and Grow Rich. And the assignments of it are to write out your goal of what you want to do basically each day. So you'd say, my goal is to be a partner with $20 million in business by 5 years from today. In order to do that, I'll provide the best quality of service as an attorney, and I will network. And you just write down the statement and you read that statement to yourself every day. That's the first part of it. And then the second part of it is you sit down. I don't know if it's for 10 minutes, 30 minutes. I should know about how to do this, but you sit down each day and you think for 20 minutes or 30 minutes about how you can develop self-confidence to be able to do what you set out to do. Because self-confidence is really the heart of everything. And if you develop self-confidence, then you can achieve anything. And people often don't achieve anything because they don't have the self-confidence. They think they're going to lose or they get scared. So having that self-confidence is really important, and something that if you're able to do it, that will lead to very good results. And if you're not, the world would take you apart. Look at people like Trump. I'm not on the side of politics one way or another, but that would be someone that probably needs a lot of self-confidence to get through so many people hating them and all these lawsuits. And it's crazy. You need to have a lot of self-confidence to be able to move through things. That's really what life's about. It's what the people in the highest positions have to do. So you need to really develop self-confidence, and you take negative experiences and you turn them into positive ones. And that's really one of the most important things anyone can do. Okay, so this is a great question. Now, I love it when people write like longer questions like this, because I think that it helps other people get a lot out of it. So let's see what this person says. I am a junior attorney who found myself unemployed and looking for a position after getting laid off by my branch office of a national firm. I had a very mixed experience. On the one hand, I discovered that I truly love the work in my practice area and have an aptitude for it. I was working over 200 hours. I was working over 200 hours a month. I lost my job, perhaps because of biting off more than I could chew and not cultivating mentors. My supervisor was extremely vindictive and insecure and basically lashed out at me because I discovered issues that she did not, which made her feel stupid. I struggled with a big sense of betrayal because I meant to help. Okay. However, I'm eager to draw lessons from this and move past and do better without being negative. It is also important to be able to pick up genuine warning signs or when an environment is generally not right. How can one distinguish between their mind playing tricks and mean genuine reasons to look for a job and choose the right? Okay, so this person has a lot to say. Yeah, so just a couple things this is important to highlight for everyone, so everyone understands some of these issues. So the first issue is branch offices. So a lot of time branch offices are much more dangerous than the real office. It's easier to get laid off there. A lot of times the work in branch offices comes from other offices. And so it becomes more difficult to hold on to jobs. There's not as much connection. That's just different. And if an animal's injured, it will cut off you have to cut off an arm or something as opposed to, I don't know, it's just, but they're very easy to close national offices and so forth. So this person was junior, didn't cultivate mentors, and had a bad supervisor because you pointed out issues and she not and made her feel stupid. By the way, this is very common. So sometimes there's associates that will work on matters and they will spot issues. They may be smarter than the partner. They may see issues that partner missed that are very important. Regardless of what happens, if you try to make someone that you're working for, you make them look bad, they're going to get rid of you. How else would they become partners and successful without making people that made them look bad by getting ahead? I don't know what happened. You may have discovered this issue. You may have made her feel dumb. You may have told other people about it. You may have felt superior to her because you did that, or you made her feel like you were superior to her. But regardless, there's soldiers in law firms, soldiers, and there's generals. If you're a soldier, your job is basically to respect authority, do what's asked, and leave strategy, and important decisions to generals, right? And not generals. make generals look good. So that's really, and then the generals are give orders to soldiers, or so they're orders, soldiers, and then strategy, and then cultivate or expect respect. So that's the idea. So this dynamic, by the way, that you've talked about here is something that people ask about every week. And so this is just very important. So you may be smarter than a partner or someone you're working for. You may see that they're making mistakes, but I don't know why this issue keeps coming up, but it comes up every week. And the more I think about it, it almost comes up most of the time when people tell me that they lost their jobs early in their career. So your job as a soldier is not to make other people feel to look better than a general. Your job is to make the generals look good. So if you don't make them feel like they're looking good, then they're going to be out to get you. And there are attorneys in law firms, I've seen it, that are in partnership type roles, aren't the smartest other associates and things, but they're partners and they manage this when they are navigated that for a long time. The lesson to learn from this is just as a soldier, you need to, as long as you're in that role, you need to respect authority. You need to avoid people that you think are going to create problems for you. You need to be reliable, not seen, not trying to get all the glory for things and behind the scenes. And so you need to be really, you need to be alert for that. And then when you say warning signs when an environment's not right, and then you just, if you're a soldier, then you're not involved in anything. You're just following orders. You're not on the social side of things. You're just doing what's asked and respecting the authority. And that's all people want. People don't want to have to think about that an associate's challenging them or a threat. That's the last thing in the world. Or the associates undermining the culture of the firm. They just want to feel like you're there. Now, there's a final thing I just wanted to say, and I'm seeing this a lot. I've seen lots of junior associates are being laid off. I'm seeing more of it now, I think, than I've seen in a long time. And it's very difficult. I was talking to a guy yesterday that was laid off or not yesterday, but this week. He was laid off in March, and he hasn't been working with me, but he sent his resume to every AmLaw 200 law firm and hasn't had an interview. And he was an associate at a very big East Coast law firm, like very successful. And he got laid off in March, and he's gone to Harvard Law School and all this stuff. Hasn't got a single interview. That's scary. If you get laid off as a junior associate, it can be very difficult to get another position. I remember I had one candidate that he got laid off from a firm in New York, and he wasn't interviews, and he got an interview. He went in to do his first interview with a partner. This is at a big New York firm, and the partner said, "Oh, I didn't realize you weren't currently working. I'm sorry, we're going to have to cancel these interviews." And so that was it. So this is how, when you get laid off, it's very dangerous for junior associates, because the presumption is that maybe you were acting like a general, or maybe you pissed people off, or maybe your work wasn't good. And so sometimes, and the law firms aren't really that accommodating to those explanations. Now, it's not to say that people that get laid off don't get jobs, but again, it's like a choice. If you're a choice for a law firm, you can choose, this is just economics. You can choose someone who is employed and likely no issues, or you can choose someone who's unemployed, possibly with issues. And of course, you're going to choose that, because you're, especially a large law firm with 500, or let's say 100 applications for a job, you're going to almost always choose the person that's employed as opposed to the unemployed person. That's just how they think. So and just think what you would do if you were faced with this. So what do you do to get a position? You have to apply to firms in other markets where you might have where you have connections. You have to apply to smaller firms and then work your way up to a better firm. But it's very scary when junior associates get laid off, because a lot of them have a lot of problems getting new jobs, and a lot of times they don't have any notice. And if you do get laid off and you have some time and you're allowed to stay on the website for a certain length of time, then you just need to get very aggressive in terms of applying to as many jobs as possible, because it can be, you can run into a lot of problems if you're unable to get position right away. It's just, I just see people this happens to and their careers just stop. And so you need to work very hard to get a job. You need to apply to a lot of places. The guy that applied to every AmLaw 100 or 200 law firm should have also been applying to a lot of smaller firms that did his practice area. And then he was also trying to apply to firms in major markets. So there's another thing I just want to bring up. This is very important for people when you're searching for jobs. I just wrote an article about this weekend, but it's important to understand. So major markets are places like New York, Washington, D.C., Bay Area, et cetera. So what happens in major markets? In major markets, there's tons of people like you. So if the law firm has an opening in a major market, they're always going to get tons of people to work there. So they don't have to take a risk on someone who's unemployed. If you're Washington, D.C., for a litigation attorney, you're going to have 100 plus applications for. So why would you choose someone who's unemployed or laid off? Same thing with New York and the Bay Area. It's just no way. There's just too many people like you out there, and they have no incentive to hiring someone that has any. You have to check off all the boxes on your resume. It's like a teacher once told me, a professor, a really good paper is I read it and there's no comments, but if I read that's what happens in an A paper. Like you just read it and everything's right. But if I have a paper that's a B paper, I'll read it and I'll have to write all these things like this isn't thought through, this isn't right. So that's the same. And then that becomes a B. And the more of that they do, it's a C. So you have to be able to turn in work your resume has to look like perfect. And because if it's not, they're only looking for the best people in the major market. So if you're laid off attorneys, your best strategy is to look at a lot of markets and smaller markets. I had a woman that was laid off or lost her job or something. This is not too long ago. And I think I've told this story before in these webinars, but she was, I think something awful happened, like her boyfriend died, I think. And so she took too much time off of work and they let her come back or something, or I don't know, but it was something like that. And so after that happened, she couldn't get interviews. She tried it on her own through a bunch of recruiters, and she tried to get interviews in the Bay Area, and no one was having anything to do with her because why would they? There's tons of people like her that didn't stop working after 6 months and are still working, and there's no issues with them. And so why would anybody in the Bay Area interview her? So all I did for her to get her multiple jobs is I sent her she had a good background. She went to Berkeley or something, but firms in Ohio, and et cetera. So just other Ohio, Tennessee, just all these sorts, I don't know, Connecticut, just markets that you typically people don't pay a lot of attention to. And she got multiple jobs. She got so many freaking interviews that she started turning them down because she was just like tired from doing all these Zoom calls. But she looked at smaller markets where there weren't a lot of people with her qualifications. So this guy that's I told you about at Harvard, I think he's in maybe Washington, D.C. So he's applying to everywhere in Washington, D.C. Well, why would you be able to get a job in Washington, D.C. when there's going to be tons of people more qualified than you? When there's tons of people that went to Harvard and not only that, that they have, that they're still working. So you have to think economically when you're looking for jobs in terms of the type of where you're applying to firms. And you have to apply to markets other people where there's not a lot of people like you. So then you're more likely to get a job. I consider myself a very ambitious person. I went to top law school and held prestigious jobs. In my last position, I worked extremely hard and was passionate about my work. I got great feedback, was told I had high promise in my firm, but nonetheless lost my job because my supervisor, my supervisor did not like, when I think of the people who my boss protected, they were not very hardworking, they put in minimal effort, didn't want to make partner, et cetera. I do not say this to insult them. I consider them friends, spend a lot of time outside of work with my coworkers. However, the people who were average were able to get along without any trouble, whereas I had something to prove and landed myself in trouble. I realized that these people were slow burn and playing the right political game, whereas I was focused on my work and going all out. I ended up being a flash in the pan. What are ways I can avoid stepping on political landmines while working to get ahead? Okay, so this is hard for me to understand what went wrong because you were working hard, but your supervisor didn't like you. So you have, in law firms, there's a dynamic, and I guess I'll talk a little about, and there's a dynamic, and it's associates are working with, and I'll just write this, associates working with with other associates or for other associates, and then their associates working for partners. So those are your two dynamics of it that there are. And for the most part, if partners want very hardworking people, right? Why wouldn't they? Working, committed people. That's what they're looking for. There's no reason that you would get fired for being hardworking, committed by a partner. But some associates, if you're threatening to supervisors, your performance is so good, sorry, it is threatening, then they will come after you or whatever. They will not. So those are the dynamics. You have associates working for the associates or just the dynamics. And then you have associates working for partners. So if you're working for another associate and you're a threat to them, and you're working harder than them, you're doing better work than them, and you're making them look bad to people above them, then that could be the problem that you're having. But in general, you do have to be able to get along with people. You have to be able to not try to look better than others, because that's just going to upset people. You don't want to advertise how well you're doing or how hard you're working. You just want to let the results you do speak for yourself. I think it's sometimes if you're very competitive and you're showing people how competitive you are and how hard you're working, and that's making other people envious of you and stuff, then they will be out with you. So you asked how you can avoid political landmines. The biggest thing to do is to be careful about not trying to brag, not trying to draw attention to yourself, because all the lawyer's going to do when that happens is you're going to maybe get them shut down. And so that's what I would think could happen. But the other thing that happens too is that people are in different types of environments. So sometimes you may be in an environment where you feel like support and like you're doing well. And other times you may be in environments where it just doesn't seem natural to you. So you have to understand the culture of where you're working and how well you may fit in there in the long run in terms of what you're going to do. So I hope that answers your question. If you want to answer a follow-up question that gives more detail, I'll answer that too. Okay, so what should I set for yourself? I want to be a partner one day and you're a fourth year associate. Give me one second. Goal. Goal setting, there's lots of goal setting books that are really good that I certainly would recommend taking a look at. Let me just hear. This one that I'm looking now is fun. It's called The Clever Fox Planner. And I like it just because it allows you to do things in your goals. What I like, there's one thing that it does at the beginning. What do I want my life to be like? And then it'll have things like it'll say, and then you would have health and fitness. And this is cool what it does. And then it does something else. Business, career, does something else. Family and friends, relationship and romance. And then, but this is just an example of what you would do, something like that. This is this thing called the Clever Fox Planner. Sure. And this is just one thing I have in my office. So you do that, and then you would go, I guess you go 1 year, 2 years, or 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, something like that. So you write all this down, and then you have whatever you want to do in these different things. But business and career, all of these kind of things are connected. You want to do that. Business and career in 1 year, you might write, in terms of that, you would write bill 2,400 hours, meet at least 10 potential clients. We need to go through all these different things that you believe is going to take you to that goal. And then your 5 years to be a partner and all those sorts of things. So you track all these things. And so that's really, once you do, then you could do the same thing, but you could go my top 1 year goals and those things. You go my top 1 year goals. And then you would list the goal why I want it, and things like that. You don't have to use any specific. This is just a Clever Fox Planner. It's something that I use most successful when I was using. There's one that Tony Robbins has called, I don't know, his type of thing. It's 4 volumes. It's crazy, but having these goal things are very important. So if you want to be a partner or something, then you start tracking these goals, and then you do what are called, this is just how the system works, but you do like monthly reviews, and then how you're going to improve the next month. So the idea is every month you look at your top 1 year goals once, and then you start doing daily goals, and then you break those up into 1 year goals. So just writing this stuff down is important because it continually reminds you of how you're doing. And if you're not doing well, it helps you get back on the right path. then I really recommend everyone do this. But yeah, this is just one planner that I'm showing you, but there's a lot of them. It doesn't have to be anything special. You can also find sheets and things that you can use to track your goals online, which is very helpful and something I also recommend. There's just plenty of ways to track goals, but there are plenty of spreadsheets and things you can find, or tools you can find for all this online, and that can be very helpful. So I would definitely recommend everyone should have some sort of goal setting program that they use. It doesn't matter which one that you use, but everyone should have something that they use to track goals that they're setting. And it's actually crucial. If you don't have that, then you're never going to get where you want. So it's just something you really should be doing, almost like religiously. Something that I do that I don't think I do enough. I try to track my goals every week, don't do enough of it. And I'm always trying to rush into doing other types of work when the most productive thing I'm doing are setting goals. Okay, what is the most important thing for an attorney who faces a setback or two in their career, especially losing a job, to get back in the field as quickly as possible? What are common mistakes attorneys make? Oh, this is a good question. And this is actually a very helpful question. It can help for the rest of your career, hopefully. What are some of the mistakes that attorneys make after losing a job, and how can one avoid them? I'm going to take these on. How much time should I spend reflecting on my experience and trying to draw lessons from it at the risk of dwelling and feeling angry versus playing and looking towards the future, such as my next position or where I want to end up and what kind of firm? Okay, so the common mistakes is actually a very good question. And I think I've already answered it to some extent, but I'm going to talk about the common mistakes again, because I think it's a very important question. One of the most common mistakes is I've seen all these, so you should write these down. You should learn from this, but these are very important. So staying committed to one market, meaning you are in New York and only interested in New York. So only we're interested in New York. That can be a problem. I would also say not immediately applying to a ton of places, meaning get out lots of applications. The one mistake that people make is that they apply only to job openings. You should apply every type of firm that does what you do, meaning you should find every type of firm that does the type of work you do, and you should apply to them. And I'm sorry, but that works very well when people do that, and it helps you quite a bit. The other mistake that people make is they not only do they apply to only job openings, but they don't use job search tools. They use sites like Indeed and LinkedIn exclusively, and meaning they're putting themselves in competition with everyone else that's got an internet connection. So a site that I found that I think implements these sites very well is Law Crossing. This site looks at every type of firm and looks at, the reason these are difficult sites is these are jobs employers are paid to advertise. And Law Crossing site looks at jobs from employer websites, et cetera. And that means they're not advertised, which is helpful for people trying to get jobs. So those are some of the most common mistakes. If you look at other markets, you're more likely to get a job. You go to markets where supply is less than demand. What that means is that if you're in New York and there's countless attorneys there like you, why would a law firm hire someone that's not working as opposed to you? If you don't apply to a lot of places immediately, the more time goes on, the harder it is to get a new job, because you're going to be discouraged and start working as a contract attorney, which isn't as attractive. There's all sorts of things. If you apply to only job openings, you're competing with employed attorneys, and you're less likely to get the job because of that. And then if you use these sites, everyone is applying to the same jobs because it's easy, more difficult to get a job. What I recommend people do is you need to apply to firms, you need to apply to attorneys with no openings. And this works very well. A substantial portion of the placements who make a BCG are always with firms that don't necessarily have openings. What you can do that's not too hard at all is you can do a search, go to Google, and say you're a corporate attorney in Baton Rouge, corporate lawyers, firms. I'm just giving a random location, but I'm just showing you how it works. So you go looking for things in Baton Rouge. The BCG comes up. That's great. It's actually the number one result in the sponsor. That's amazing. But so you could look at all the firms here, right? So you look at all the firms on BCG, you're going to see all these firms in the market. But then the other thing is you go, and so these are all places that you could apply to if you're a corporate attorney in Baton Rouge. But the idea also that's pretty cool is then you can go to what I like how this particular, they list all these different firms and people. So you can go in and apply to, I've never heard of the Trichell law firm. You could certainly apply there. And this is wrongful death personal injury. It doesn't look 18-wheeler crashes. It does not look like a corporate law firm, but you would find law firms that do corporate law. And these are not all corporate firms, but you would find people that do that type of work. And then you apply to them and with an unsolicited resume. And when you apply to places about openings, if they have a need for you, then they're more likely to hire you. So I recommend that everyone do whatever they can to apply to many places as you possibly can that don't have openings. It's like the smartest thing you can do. A lot of people do that. So this is a good question. In your experience, have you observed any cultural, organizational factors in the legal industry that contribute to attorneys associating negativity with achieving high levels of success? I think that, yes. So I think that people are afraid of long hours or lack of insecurity, all these things, alienation, but all. There's all sorts of things that a lawyer may not want to continue. Of course, there's something you may say to yourself, why would I want to become a partner and have to work these long hours for the rest of my life? And that's a very good point. Of course, think about it. Why would I, why would I want to have freedom and have to work for this office and these people all the time? Why would I want to feel insecure that if I lose business or I could lose my job at any time? So that's negativity. And you certainly can look at all those things in a negative way. A positive way would be saying, I can earn a good living. I can have respect. I know what I need to do to have success. I can work in interesting matters. I can guide companies and individuals on how to avoid legal issues. So there's all sorts of positive things you could be associating with and could really be helpful to you. So I would say that's some of the things people do, but how you approach it. Did everything you said and got a fantastic job of great people. Thank you. I work hard, build tons of hours, work weekends, and now I'm being assigned what I think are large, huge cases and a lot of them. I love everything and I am so grateful, but I'm a touch exhausted. I need and want the job, but it feels like running a marathon at a 50-yard dash pace and trying to step that up even more. Any suggestions? That's the idea is that's great that everything's working so well for you and trying to step it up even more. This kind of questions and things are like because people do this stuff and it does work if you apply yourself as well. I do have a blog that I haven't all looking and stuff. I have because I spend my time mainly doing these webinars and the occasional article for lawyers. But this has stories and things. There are lots of articles on how to stay motivated and what to do and that sort of thing. So that may be helpful for you to take a look at that. At one point, it was one of the most popular type of blog in the country, but it certainly isn't anymore because I haven't worked on it. There's a lot of articles on there that can help you with. But in order to step stuff even more, it's all about associations. And Tony Robbins talks a lot about this. And he may be something that's useful for you to read or to get involved with. But you need to associate pleasure with working hard. And you just think about all the reasons it's positive for you and you like it. And then you associate pain without succeeding. That's how you motivate yourself is you think about, and this is what everyone should do. You need to program your mind to associate pleasure with working hard and working hard and then dash succeed. And then you need to associate pain with, so you just put all these associations and write down, why is it good for me to work hard? Why is it good for me to get better? Why is it good for me to do that? But it sounds like you're doing extremely well. It's okay to be exhausted, but you associate being exhausted also pleasure. Like this is what it looks like when you're succeeding. The other thing too that's interesting is there is this rule, and it's very good when you're a young attorney, that the more work you're doing and the more the more you're putting yourself into the work, you're programming yourself and you're learning to be very something. And then you're learning to think about issues and become better. And this is what they do with doctors. Doctors make them stay up like 36 hours, 48 hours working. And there's certainly some reasons that they make money in hospitals, but it's also, I think, a lot of this programming yourself to really understand something to do well and taking the time when you're younger to be very good at it. Because if you work very hard, it's not all about you're making someone money. It's about you're learning stuff and you're programming yourself to be really good at something by doing all this work, and you're getting training and you're getting an opportunity. Because most attorneys, by the way, a lot of them, they're firms and don't have enough work, so enough to keep them busy. So if you're in a position where there's enough to keep you busy, that's and so you should be happy with it and worried about it. I mean, it's a great thing that you're getting all this work. So the other thing I would say is there's this thing that Malcolm Gladwell has a book, but it's like the 10,000 hour rule, where people tend to become takes about 10,000 hours to learn something and become good at it. And I think that's actually very true. He says that the Beatles, for example, played in these clubs and stuff for 10,000 hours and then they got good. And it's like that with most professions, and people come things. You work on it for, say, 10,000 hours and then you become an expert. When you're an expert, then suddenly you can do things that other people can't do. And that's why it takes 5 years to become proficient in the practice area. So when you start in a firm, you're really becoming the best you can be until you've been there. So you build 10,000 hours. Then you start understanding this area. So I would just think about all this experience you're getting, and you're making you much better. And if you're getting all that experience, you're going to be much farther ahead of other people that aren't doing that. It's very good what you're doing and doing that. And associations are important. Tony Robbins has programs where you can learn about this stuff and it can help you. And I would recommend doing it if you can. They're just sort of MP3s or whatever you can buy. Okay, how would you discuss the negative experience of failing a bar exam 2 times in one jurisdiction and forcing you to work in another firm since your current firm will only give you 2 chances to pass? Note, I've already passed 2 other state bar exams, so I'm licensed in another jurisdiction. Okay, so this is very common. Lots of people fail the California bar exam, New York bar exam. A lot of people fail these exams, and a lot of people do it twice. And most of the time when someone fails a bar exam twice, it's not due to any lack of skill or smarts that they have. It's just the fact that they weren't able to take the time to study because they were working or didn't think they needed to study, or who knows. Those are the main reasons that people end up failing. So if you failed, you lost your job, then I would try to go to work in a firm that is in a state where you have experience. If you're from there, you can always say, I'm doing this so I can move back. So there's all sorts of things you can say if you pass the bar exam and to try to get work in another jurisdiction. If you really want to be in the state where you failed the bar exam, I would recommend taking it again. The only thing about the bar when you take it again is you do need to study a certain number of hours. I remember when there was this girl that was taking the California bar exam, and I was her recruiter, and she was in this hotel, and I dropped her off, and it was funny. There was a guy there that had taken it like 10 times or something. And so sometimes people take the exam a lot of times, but you just need to concentrate on passing next time by studying a lot. Meaning, I would say for the California bar exam, people should study like 4 to 6 weeks stop. And yeah, I would try to get a job in another jurisdiction. I would wear your license first, and because you don't want to have too long of a break in your resume. Okay. Yeah, it's all, and that's the thing I would say, because there's a lot of people today that are saying that they've been unemployed and stuff, and it's actually very common. I'm seeing more resumes of younger attorneys, especially, and that are getting laid off now. So I think there's obviously something going on in the economy, and they were even saying it was, I think yesterday, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal about Warren Buffett selling all his stocks, and he wouldn't be selling because he thinks something bad's happening or something, and he's the most successful investor in the world. So why I think he is. And so what, if he's selling stocks, why is that sort of thing? For juniors that may have tried various strategies, what guidance do you offer in terms of maintaining motivation to continue refining their approach until they see desired results? I think I don't know what strategies you tried, but in order to maintain your motivation, I think it's important to maintain your motivation. And I don't know what strategies you're talking about, whether it's at work or whether it's, what it is. There's a guy I like. I think he's got, and this is the guy actually, Tony Robbins got all his ideas from and repackaged them when he started. But his name is Brian Tracy. And I actually find him very motivational. He talks about all this kind of stuff, like maintaining your motivation, how to think, and he's got some very good programs that you can just buy on Amazon. And I like him. Again, I'm not an expert in all these things in terms of maintaining motivation. I think the only way to maintain motivation is, and so I recommend everyone Brian Tracy. I think he's pretty cool. He's got a lot of good ideas, and there's just things that he talks about that are where you say things over and over to yourself, believing that they're true. And I found that very interesting because this is something that Tony Robbins did. He was living in someone's basement and he listened to, didn't have any money. And he listened to this Brian Tracy, you have to have a tape back then or something, but he listened to Brian Tracy and he started writing all these citations on paper and not paper, with a poster board, putting them all around the basement, hanging them on clotheslines and things. And then I noticed, because I used to work with him, that he would do this at all seminars. He'd do it around his house. So just saying positive things to yourself and doing positive self-talk and don't letting things get you down and is really powerful and something the most successful people do. And not only that, but they take all this stuff and they use it, these incantations, to empower them. There's also other, and I wrote an article about this, and let me even see if I find it. Very interesting. Just see if I can here. So I'm just seeing this here. It's even slow to load. I don't know what's going on here. I don't even know what the heck wrong with this website. I think it's crazy. Well, I'm going to have to, all right, that's embarrassing, but I'll figure it out later. But anyway, so Brian Tracy, incantations, the things you say to yourself is a very good way of maintaining motivation doing that. So that's what I would do. But the other point I wanted to make to you is some people, there's kind of two responses. I hired this crisis management firm once to do some stuff. And the head of the firm said, when bad things happen, or when bad things happen to people, they either get sad or they get angry. So you have two choices. One is you can get sad about something. And if you get sad about something, that means you just feel badly and you just wallow in that, or you can get angry and take positive action. And that's really what I recommend. So you get angry, and then what you do is you use the anger, instead of allowing yourself to get sad, you use it as a rocket fuel to improve and fight against whatever happened. That's really the best way. So you just get mad about it and you use it as kind of rocket fuel, and you use it to push yourself to do much better. And so that was how I would deal with this, as I would use it as rocket fuel. So anything that's bad that happens to you, instead of getting sad, you get angry, and you use your anger to power yourself through. And I do recommend Brian Tracy. I listened to him the first time about a year ago, and I was very impressed with the stuff he was saying. So I think that could be something that's important. One of your articles talks about credibility and the importance of always being honest. Many examples you talk about seem to easy to fall into. If an attorney, especially a younger attorney, makes a mistake that harms their credibility, failing to raise an issue in time, missing a deadline, not letting a supervisor know when a project fell behind, how can an attorney recover from it? So sometimes it's okay to be honest. If you did something and missed a deadline or did something, it's okay to be honest, because you have to remember that anybody that you're working for has probably made errors in their career too. And then it can create problems. I remember one time I was in this giant case. We were representing Northrop Grumman. The firm had hired 20 temporary contract attorneys and paralegals to go through these documents. For some reason, I was a young attorney, put me in charge of this giant document room. So I was working like a lot of hours, like tons of hours, and completely forgot that this document review was going on. And so the partner asked me how it was going and wanted to report it. And I was like, what? And because I had forgotten about all this document review a month and thought I was going to get into lots of trouble that I was. And so I went over there and everyone was just lying around, not working, and it wasn't a good situation. But the point is that when this kind of stuff happens to you that may hurt you, you can always recover from it, especially if you're a young attorney, if you're honest and they realize that you're not, and you'll learn from it. So that's really the best thing you can do. I think people love to see other people improve. If you're able to improve and get through something, then that could help you quite a bit. Let me see here. Okay. Someone says the volume is low. I'm not sure I understand that, but I will ask a call. Okay. So this is a good question. I'm actually, it says how do attorneys become board members, committees for large or small companies or nonprofits, which I assume can turn into potential work. Yeah, that can sometimes turn into potential work. It's good to have things that you do outside of the office where you meet people. Sometimes it can learn to work. Other times it can't. To become a board member of things, I think you would probably want to be involved in a different sort of organization first that you like. And then after doing that, I think it's something that could lead to some. For all the work you've done, attorneys have been watching, find meaningful careers. I'm watching your live webinars and reading recruiting articles for about a year. Throughout this time, I've been considering becoming a legal recruiter, but I have doubts I would be considered by recruiting firms because having big law experience seems to be highly preferred. I don't have big law experience, but I have experience being a judicial law clerk as a litigation attorney for a small firm. Enjoy legal research and writing. What can a person in my circumstances do to get it? First of all, no. So this is interesting, and I'll explain this to everyone that's on the call right now because it's interesting about how recruiting works. So almost all recruiters, that you have your kind of different types of firms, almost all recruiters, and see these are the most prestigious, and then these are your AmLaw 100, 200 firms. And then these are your middle market, mid-sized firms, mostly represent mostly businesses. And then these are, the reason I'm writing all this down is I'm trying to explain to you how recruiting works and how the recruiting market works. And these are, small firms, small businesses, individuals. And these are your smallest firms, representing individuals without a lot of money. So these are just your different types of firms. So the way most people think about the market and what most recruiters think, almost all recruiters only do this. And they only represent the people for the biggest firms, and that's all they do, which is actually crazy because in our company, let me see if I can even show this. In our company, what happens is we certainly make these type of placements, but most of the activity is really where most of the people are getting jobs is really right here. This may comprise 5% or less of the market. This would be maybe 1.5% because you're talking about Pervass, Swain and Moore, Wachtell, and that sort of thing. But this may be 80%, 70 or 60% of the market. And then this is probably another 10%, I don't know, 10%. Or no, not even that. I would say it's probably, you get the idea. And this might be, 35%, I don't know, 30%, I don't know. And then you have, 20%. I don't know what the numbers are, but the idea is that, and then, 60, 65. So the idea here is that most of and these are like your solo practitioners doing DUIs and wills and things. But the idea is that most recruiters are only focused on this because that's the easiest. Here you just look for someone that went to top law schools, working in a top firm, and then they say, oh, we're so prestigious, we only represent these people. But in reality, this is where most of the activity is, and this is where we make most of our placements. And we don't make a lot of placements to solo practitioners. We make a ton of placements to small firms and mid-sized firms, and also a lot of placements to these firms. But that's certainly not the whole market. And so the whole market is much more complex than that. The whole market is taken into account an incredible number of things. Let me just see if I can pull something up for you. It's interesting. Give me 1 second, just to show you kind of what the market looks like. Give me 1 second. Okay, I'm going to pull something up. It's actually pretty interesting. So if you give me a second, I'll pull it up for everyone so you can see that. I'm trying to pull up something in our database. I don't want to show people's names or anything, so that's fine. I'll show you something here in the BCG database just so you can see an idea. There's so many variables that go into a candidate, like what a candidate is and what someone is. So you have law schools, you have the type of jobs they're interested in, you have these different things that have happened to them, like where their interest is. You have their preferred location, their regions of interest, you have their primary practice area, and you can see all this, and you have their secondary practice area. And I'm going through all this very quickly, but attorneys do a million different things. So someone might do education, higher education, or education defense. There's just a lot of different things that they do. And so when you're looking for attorneys, And then you have to do all these sorts of things that happen with them. We also have ranks. So attorneys you can do the rank, you can do graduation date, you can do all these different things. And so there's so much that goes into an attorney, and there's so many different types of attorneys. And so the idea with these people, the recruiters that only do this, is they're only looking at a few types of attorneys, and that's it. So that's all you have, then that's not good, right? So you're only doing a few types of things. So you can be a recruiter, was all I'm saying, because this is where most of the market is. And this is what our company does. We look at everyone, and we're obviously doing a lot that other people don't. They're only looking at this because it's easiest. And that's just something to be aware of in terms of what's going on with other firms. Let's see here, with other recruiting firms. So yes, anybody can become a recruiter regardless of your qualifications. Going to a great law school and stuff doesn't mean, okay. How do you answer your biggest weakness question in an interview? How are you working to improve? So you can read a lot of these answers to these types of questions in your online, but the idea of the biggest weakness is you typically want to make it something like that talks about you're too detail-oriented, you work too hard, you don't give up easily, you worry too much about what could have you done that haunts you to do better. Just anything that makes people feel that you're not working as hard, that the mistakes you have are actually strengths. That's the biggest thing you can do. I mean, these types of questions too, by the way, I don't like it when people ask them. I think the best law firms approach questions in a way that they're not confrontational and things. They're just more conversational. And people ask those types of questions. It's more, I think, in the corporate realm, people do law firms. But if you do, that's the way you phrase it. Okay. Thanks everyone for being here. I think I've got all the questions. Next week's webinar, I think, will be very good, and I'm excited about it. If you do have questions and things you're thinking about throughout the week, and if you're next week, I would recommend just thinking about other questions, because it's very helpful, I think, when people ask questions, because a lot of people are having the same issues. And one of the big issues I've seen is junior associates losing their job by looking smarter than people that they're working with. This is a question that comes up over and over. It comes up every week. So a lot of people do lose their positions, and recovering from that's important. But again, thanks everyone for being here, and I will be back next week. Thanks.